Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The crystal champagne flute didn't just break. It pulverized in his grip, driving shards of expensive glass into his palm. But the physical sting was nothing compared to the voice on the other end of the line. Blood, dark and thick, began to drip onto the pristine white tablecloth of the chaotic New Year's Eve gala. Yet 60-year-old magnate Victor Sterling didn't blink, his predatory gray eyes fixed on a ghost only he could see. The room was filled with the glitterati of the city, counting down the final hours of the year, unaware that the most powerful predator in the room had just been wounded. "Say that again," Victor commanded, his voice a low rumble that cut through the ambient jazz like a serrated blade. "And if you are lying to me, I will burn your entire institution to the ground before the fireworks start." "Mr. Sterling, please," the nurse on the other end sobbed, her voice trembling against the background noise of screaming monitors and frantic medical orders. "We found your number in his emergency contacts under Do Not Call. The patient, Julian, he's hemorrhaging. The baby is coming too early. He's calling for you. He's dying, sir." Victor didn't say goodbye. He dropped the phone into the ruin of the champagne glass and turned on his heel. The crowd parted like the Red Sea before him, silenced by the sheer, suffocating aura of a dominant alpha in a state of catastrophic distress. His pheromones, usually controlled and smelling of expensive cedar and aged scotch, now flooded the ballroom with the scent of ozone and burnt gunpowder, the smell of a storm about to break the world. He moved with a speed that belied his 6 decades. His trusted bodyguard, Cale, fell into step beside him, already speaking into his wrist comms. "Get the helicopter," Victor snarled, ripping his tuxedo bow tie loose as he strode into the biting winter air. "Now, sir," the blizzard, Cale warned, holding the door of the waiting limousine open. "Air traffic is grounded. Visibility is 0. Victor stopped. He looked up at the swirling vortex of snow that was burying the city, a white shroud for the dying year. He grabbed Cale by the lapels, his silver hair catching the flashing lights of the paparazzi kept at bay. "I don't care if you have to tear the sky open with your bare hands. Get me to St. Jude's Hospital. If Julian dies because of traffic, everyone in this city pays." The drive was a blur of skipped red lights and terrifying velocity. The armored limousine tore through the slush, guided by Victor's silent, terrifying fury. Inside the cabin, the silence was heavy. Victor stared at his hand, the blood now dried in the creases of his palm. He hadn't felt the glass cut him. He couldn't feel anything but the gaping, icy void in his chest that had opened the day Julian left him. 7 months. It had been 7 months since he had thrown the most beautiful thing he had ever owned out of his penthouse. Asterisk, "You are a child, Julian." Asterisk, Victor's memory played the scene back with sadistic clarity. Asterisk, "You want a life? Go find one. I am too old, too scarred, and too damn tired to play house with an Omega who thinks love can fix a monster." Asterisk. He had been cruel. Deliberately, surgically cruel. He had used his age, his power, and his overwhelming alpha presence to crush Julian's spirit, believing it was an act of mercy. Victor was 60 years old, a man with enemies in every government and a heart encased in iron. Julian was 24, a sunbeam caught in a mausoleum. Victor had convinced himself that setting Julian free was the only moral thing he had ever done. He hadn't known. He closed his eyes, his head falling back against the leather seat. He hadn't known about the baby. If he had known Julian was carrying his heir, his pup, he would have locked him in a tower of gold and never let him see the cruelty of the world. But Julian, stubborn, proud, beautiful Julian, had taken the rejection and the secret and disappeared. "Sir, we're 5 minutes out," Cale said from the front, his knuckles white on the steering wheel as the car fishtailed on the ice. "The hospital is reporting code blue." "Drive faster," Victor whispered, the command carrying more weight than a scream. St. Jude's was a fortress of misery under the assault of the blizzard. The automatic doors barely had time to open before Victor stormed through, his cashmere coat billowing like a cape of shadows. Security guards stepped forward, hands on their belts, only to freeze as the full weight of Victor's presence hit them. It wasn't just authority, it was biology. A high-tier alpha in distress emits a signal that triggers primal fear in lesser ranks. The lobby went silent. Where is he? Victor demanded, approaching the reception desk. The young beta woman behind the glass went pale. Sir, you can't be back here. Julian Rowe. Victor slammed his bloody hand onto the counter, cracking the laminate. Maternity ward. ICU. Tell me where he is before I start tearing down walls. Room 404, she squeaked, pointing towards the elevators. But the doctors said no visitors. Victor didn't wait. He bypassed the elevators, taking the stairs two at a time, his lungs burning, his 60-year-old joints protesting, but his adrenaline overriding all human limitation. When he reached the fourth floor, the smell hit him. It was the scent of distress, sour milk, fear, and the metallic tang of blood. Julian's blood. It cut through the antiseptic sterility of the hospital like a scream. Victor followed the scent, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He found the room by the cluster of panicked nurses outside. A doctor, looking harried and exhausted, was shouting orders. We're losing the heartbeat. Get the anesthesiologist now. We have to cut. No. A voice, thin and ragged, drifted from inside the room. No, you wait for him. He's coming. The sound of Julian's voice shattered Victor's composure. He shoved past the doctor, entering the room like a deity of vengeance. I'm here, Victor roared, the sound filling the small, chaotic room. The machinery was loud, the lights blinding. In the center of the bed, hooked up to a spider web of tubes and wires, lay Julian. He looked small, terrifyingly fragile. His skin was translucent, sweat-drenched hair plastered to his forehead. But his eyes, those bright, defiance-filled emerald eyes, locked onto Victor immediately. You took your time, Julian rasped, a weak smile trembling on his lips before a contraction seized his body. He arched off the bed, a guttural cry of agony tearing from his throat. Victor was at his side in a heartbeat. He didn't care about the blood soaking the sheets or the frantic warnings of the medical staff. He grabbed Julian's hand, engulfing the smaller, trembling fingers in his large, scarred grip. I'm here, Jules. I'm here, Victor murmured, his voice cracking, shedding the persona of the ruthless CO to reveal the terrified man beneath. He brought Julian's hand to his lips, kissing the knuckles. I didn't know. God, Julian, why didn't you tell me? Julian slumped back against the pillows as the contraction faded, gasping for air. You told me to leave. You said. I was a mistake. I lied. Victor hissed, his gray eyes burning with intensity. I lied because I am a coward. Because I thought I was saving you from me. Look at you. Look at what I've done. Sir, you need to step back, the doctor insisted, moving in with a syringe. His blood pressure is spiking. The placenta has detached. We have to perform an emergency C-section immediately, or we lose them both. Victor whipped his head around, his snarl stopping the doctor cold. Do it. Save them. If he feels pain, I will dismantle your career. If he dies, I will dismantle your life. Victor, Julian squeezed his hand, his grip surprisingly strong. If you have to choose. Don't, Victor commanded, turning back to him, his face hovering inches from Julian's. Do not finish that sentence. There is no choice. You live. You both live. That is an order, Julian. Stubborn old man, Julian whispered, tears leaking from the corners of his eyes. Our son. He's stubborn too. He wouldn't come out until you were here. Our son. The words hit Victor with the force of a physical blow. A son. A legacy he had never wanted, never thought he deserved, now fighting for life inside the person he loved most. Anesthesia is in, the anesthesiologist announced. He's going under. Stay, Julian pleaded, his eyes fluttering shut as the drugs took hold. Don't. Leave me alone in the dark. Never again, Victor vowed, leaning down to press his forehead against Julian's clammy temple. I am right here. I'm not going anywhere. The next hour was an eternity carved out of time. Victor stood in the corner of the operating room, dressed in blue scrubs that strained against his broad shoulders, his eyes never leaving the surgical field. He watched the violence of birth. The blood, the scalpel, the urgency. It was a battlefield, and Julian was the casualty. Victor had brokered billion-dollar mergers, ordered hostile takeovers that destroyed companies, and stared down cartel leaders, yet he had never known fear like this. Every beep of the monitor was a judgment. Every furrow of the surgeon's brow was a sentence. Then a sound. A wet, angry, indignant cry pierced the room. The surgeon lifted a small, writhing creature from the ruin. He was covered in vernix and blood, his face scrunched up in fury, tiny fists flailing against the cold air of the world. "It's a boy," the nurse announced, her voice filled with relief. A healthy, very loud boy. Victor's knees nearly buckled. He gripped the edge of a medical tray to steady himself. He watched as they cleaned the infant, checking his vitals. The baby continued to scream, a powerful, demanding sound. "He has your lungs," the doctor muttered, glancing at Victor as he began to stitch Julian up. "And the father's vitals are stabilizing. He's going to be fine, Mr. Sterling. You can breathe now." Victor didn't breathe. He walked over to the warmer where the nurse was swaddling the infant. He looked down. The baby had tufts of dark hair like Julian, but the scowl? That was undeniably Victor. The infant opened his eyes, blurry, unfocused, but searching. "Sir, do you want to hold him?" the nurse asked tentatively. Victor looked at his hands. Hands that had destroyed, intimidated, and pushed away love. I shouldn't. He needs his father's scent," the nurse said gently. "It helps regulate his heartbeat. It's biology, sir." Victor reached out, his movements hesitant. He scooped the bundle up, the weight of it negligible, yet heavier than the world. He brought the child to his chest, tucking him against the crook of his neck, right over his scent gland. The effect was instantaneous. The baby stopped crying. He nuzzled into the rough fabric of the scrubs, inhaling the scent of cedar and alpha, and let out a small, contented sigh. Victor felt a tear, hot and foreign, track down his cheek. He stood there, the 60-year-old titan of industry, weeping silently over a bundle of blankets while his Omega slept on the table behind him. It was New Year's Day when Julian finally woke up. The storm outside had passed, leaving the city blanketed in a pristine, blinding white silence. The sun streamed through the hospital blinds, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Julian blinked, his body feeling like it had been run over by a truck, but the pain was distant, dull. He turned his head. Victor was sitting in the uncomfortable hospital chair, still wearing the ruined tuxedo pants and shirt, though the jacket and tie were gone. He was asleep, his chin resting on his chest, looking older and more exhausted than Julian had ever seen him. But in his arms, cradled with possessive tenderness, was the baby. Julian watched them for a long moment, the anger he had held on to for 7 months melting away in the face of the tableau. He shifted, the bed railing squeaking. Victor's eyes snapped open instantly. The predator was awake. "You're up," Victor said, his voice gravelly with sleep. He shifted carefully, ensuring the baby didn't wake, and stood up, moving to the side of the bed. "I'm up," Julian whispered, his throat dry. Is he okay?" "He is perfect," Victor said softly. He lowered the baby onto Julian's chest. "He is absolutely perfect. He has your nose." Julian looked down at his son, tears welling up again. He touched the baby's cheek, then looked up at Victor. The alpha looked wrecked. Stubble covered his jaw, his silver hair was messy, and there was a vulnerability in his eyes that terrified Julian. "Victor, I'm sorry," Victor interrupted, falling to his knees beside the bed. It was a shocking sight, Victor Sterling, kneeling. "I was wrong, Julian. I was arrogant and I was afraid. I thought my age made me unworthy of you. I thought my past would poison your future." He reached out, taking Julian's hand, careful of the 4 lines. "But when I got that call, when I thought I lost you, I realized that a life without you isn't a life. It's just existence. It's just waiting to die." Julian ran his fingers through Victor's silver hair. "You pushed me away. I know. I was pregnant and alone in a studio apartment in Queens because you threw me out," Julian said, his voice hardening slightly. "You have a lot to make up for, Victor. This," he gestured to the baby, "doesn't fix everything." "I know," Victor said, pressing his face into Julian's palm. "I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I will grovel. I will retire. I will burn the company down if you ask me to. Just let me be here. Let me be his father. Let me be yours." Julian looked at the man who had dominated his dreams and his nightmares. He saw the regret etched into the lines of Victor's face. He saw the love that the older man had tried so hard to strangle, now blooming wild and terrified. You don't have to burn the company down, Julian sighed, a small smile touching his lips. But you do have to change diapers. Victor let out a huff of laughter, a sound of pure relief. I will hire a team of experts. Victor, I will change the diapers. The alpha corrected himself immediately. I will change all the diapers. Julian shifted the baby so he could see Victor clearly. His name is Leo. Leo, Victor tested the name. Strong. A lion. Leo Victor Sterling, Julian added softly. Victor froze. He looked up, his gray eyes shimmering. You kept my name? I never stopped loving you, you stupid old wolf, Julian murmured. I just stopped liking you for a while. Victor stood up and leaned over, pressing a kiss to Julian's forehead, then his lips. It was chaste, reverence-filled, tasting of forgiveness and a second chance. Happy New Year, Julian, Victor whispered against his lips. Happy New Year, Victor. Outside, the first fireworks of the delayed celebration began to burst over the snow-covered city, but in room 404, the only light that mattered was the one in Victor's eyes as he watched his world breathe. And that is how the ruthless king finally bowed to his queen and prince. If you enjoyed seeing the mighty Victor Sterling brought to his knees by love, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, can a man ever truly make up for abandoning his pregnant partner, even if he thought it was for their own good? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,